Hey guys, Matthew and welcome to another bossing guide. Today we're going to be looking at the last of the invitation, which is going to be the Feared. Now, as you can see, I don't actually have killed these bosses, right? I don't have a Feared encounter ready to go and ready to run, so I'm not actually going to be doing the encounter for the very simple reason that, first off, I would never recommend somebody try to do the Feared on this level of budget, right? On a 5 link with this sort of budget. I have done it. I've even done it on stream, but it wasn't consistent, right? It was about a 50% chance of either completing it or failing it, which is not something I would ever recommend when there's that much investment going into the actual encounter. Now, the reason I decided not to showcase it and take the 50-50 of whether I'll succeed or fail is because we know that there's a lot of upcoming nerfs that are coming. For example, they said that most builds are going to lose anywhere between 20 and 40% damage. That's a massive nerf. They said that flasks are going to be nerfed, right? So we know that flasks are really big for DPS on a lot of builds. So let's just say my build is about to lose 40% damage and I was already struggling to do the Feared before these nerfs. Obviously, there's going to be a 0% chance for me to succeed on a build with this budget. Now, of course, if I throw in a 6 link, I start throwing in a little bit of upgrades on the wands, on the helmet, get a helmet enchant, right? There's a lot of things that I can do in order to really buff up my damage to where all these nerfs are going to be no longer going to matter. But of course, since I've been running this exact setup for the entirety of the series, I didn't want to change it up. But yeah, so that's why I decided not to showcase it, but there's still a lot of things that I want to talk about in regards to the Feared, such as how to maximize profit, how to figure out if it's even worthwhile to run it, because that's a question I get all the time. Is it even worth it to run the Feared? Cortex is 3x. Am I going to make money? Is it possible? Right? That's a question I get a lot. So I want to talk about how to figure that out for the people who are interested at any point in the league. And of course, I want to talk about things like map mods to avoid and why that is. Okay, so let's start off with a quick tip on your awakening level. So if you were to actually pop in the Feared in your map device, you would see that the encounter is actually called the Maven's Crucible. And what that means is that this is affected by your awakening level. So Awakening level 9, for example, gives unique map bosses have 27% more life. This is going to affect the bosses in the Feared. So in a league start scenario, if you're lacking damage, I would highly recommend that you unsocket all of your different regions, get yourself to Awakening level 0 in order to not have to deal with the additional more life modifier on the bosses, because you're really not getting anything for it, right? All of these bonuses from your awakening level, if you read through them, none of them really affect the Feared encounter or any of the bosses that you have to do in order to get to the Feared either way, right? So awakening level 0 is going to make the bosses a lot squishier. 27% more life is a lot more. It's a lot of life, especially when your build doesn't do that much damage. Okay, tip number 2 that I want to talk about is Gaze into the Abyss. Gaze into the Abyss is going to affect both Elder, Uber Elder, and the Feared encounter, and it's going to add a 10% chance on top of whatever the percent is, which is about 22 or so percent, 23%. So this is going to make it so instead of being like a 1 in 4 encounters that you get a Watcher's Eye, it's going to turn it into a 1 in 3. That's a pretty massive deal, considering the Watcher's Eyes is going to be pretty much your main money maker from these different encounters. I'm talking about Elder and Uber Elder. Of course, when it comes to the Feared, it's all about those bottled faiths. Or typically anyways. Now, of course, with the upcoming flash nerfs, who knows? Alright, so that's pretty much how you want to set up your Atlas and, of course, your Uncharted Realm passives for this encounter. Now, real quickly on map mods to avoid for this, AoE is a massive no-no. It affects all the different bosses, right? Think of, for example, Aziri putting her storm or her storm calls, Shaper Beam, Elder Bubbles, right? All of that. This all gets affected by AoE, so when the bosses have AoE and they decide to all do this at the same time, there's literally nowhere to sit on the arena that's safe. So AoE is a no-no for me. Next is +2 projectile. This affects things like Shaper Balls, Aziri Spears, Chiula Hammers while he's spinning. So that's another no-no because, again, it's going to make it so much harder to dodge all the upcoming mechanics, and there's already a lot of them. So +2 proj, absolutely not. And then anything that's related to speed, right? Attacking cast speed, turbo, onslaught, frenzy charge on hit, anything that gives the bosses speed is going to be really, really bad as well, because of course, if you're playing this build and you're a totem build, the bosses are going to hit your totems, so they are going to get all these frenzy charges or whatever, right? Which is going to make them super, super fast, and of course, if they're faster, there's a lot more mechanics on the ground, there's a lot more things coming at you, it makes the fight a lot harder. So again, that's a big no-no for me. Okay, after that, it really is, these are like the three main ones. After that, it really comes down to your own character. If you're playing a really tanky character, right, that's able to take a massive hit to the face, but you do very little damage, then you don't want to run, obviously, tank mods, right? Because if you're the tank and you do ZDPS already, and you're running tank mods on the invitation, then it's going to take you literally years to kill these bosses. So instead, focus on rolling damage mods in order to get as much quantity as possible, because your build is capable of taking a massive hit. And the opposite is also true, right? If your build does a ton of damage, but is very, very squishy, there's no reason to roll tank mods on the invitation, right? You want to roll as many damage mods on the invitation because your build won't care. You're going to get free quantity on it because you're going to be able to one-shot the bosses, right? If you're doing a ton of damage, who gives a crap if the boss has like any DPS mods if they're getting one-shotted, right? So you're going to be able to run very, very juicy invitations because of that. Okay, additional tip. Additional tip is going to be running the invitations magic. There's no reason to ever run these white, right? There's a lot of modifiers that you can get by running these magic that do not affect your character whatsoever. So, for example, let's just say, let's see. Monsters reflect 18% of elemental damage, right? Now, this is bad for me because I'm a pure elemental build, which means my totems would kill themselves. But let's just say it was monster reflect 18% of physical damage. That doesn't affect my build at all. It literally does nothing. So it would be a free 10% quantity on the invitation, and then I can augment it. And let's just say I get something else that doesn't really matter, right? Like something like this. Players have 60% less recovery rate. If your build doesn't really care about that recovery rate, then you don't really care about these mods, right? So you're getting some free quantity for your for simply throwing a few alterations on the actual encounter. And I would say you should always do this. Even if it takes a few alterations, it's typically always going to be worth and it's always going to be absolutely valuable, because let's just say I was able to run this, right? 60% less curse and minus max. Yeah, let's say my build is going to be one-shotting the bosses anyways. This doesn't affect me at all. 30% free quantity on the actual invitation. That's huge because of my returns. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about is essentially figuring out whether this is worth to roll or not, right? Should you be farming the Feared at any point in the league? Is it worth it to farm this encounter? Well, this is exactly what we're going to talk about now. So what we're going to do is we're going to head over to poeprofit.com, and we are going to go under bosses. So under bosses, we have the normal bosses, but what we're actually going to be interested in is the talented bosses, because we want to see, this is basically talented, basically means that affected by the Uncharted Realm, and in this case, it's really just Gaze into the Abyss. So he has a Gaze into the Abyss for Elder, and then for Uber Elder, so you can see the profit margins. Okay, so if I look at this at first glance, right, and I'm like, okay, I want to do Uber Elder. Matt told me to put Gaze into the Abyss. I'm guaranteed profit, right? Well, minus 117 chaos on your initial investment of 140 chaos. What happened, right? How is this possible? Well, it's very simple. This is wrong, okay? Put it simply, this is wrong. So of course this is going to be right. It's going to be the price of the different fragments in order to actually farm the Uber Elder himself. But what's going to be wrong is going to be under the loot, because now this is not to fault Grimro, because he's the person who made this. By the way, check out Grimro if you don't know who he is. I'm sure most of you do, however. This is pulling directly from PoE Ninja, right? So all these prices are pulled directly from PoE Ninja, and then it does the math, and then it just pushes out a number, and it's telling you whether you're making profit or not. The problem is that the biggest item that you're going to be getting is going to be the Watcher's Eye, right? That's going to be your main money maker. If I look at Watcher's Eye right now, 33% drop chance because of Gaze into the Abyss goes from 23 to 33. Good. It says that a Watcher's Eye is worth 25.4 chaos. Now, the reason for that is because it's pulling from PoE Ninja, right? Now, it might be a little outdated here. It says that it's actually 28.2, or maybe it's even pulling from the cheapest Watcher's Eyes that's actually available in the league right now. I don't even know where that number is coming from. Let's have a look. So the cheapest Watcher's Eye online right now, no, that would be even 10C, 5C. So I'm not sure if it's pulling from this or where it's getting this number from, but this number is absolutely wrong. Okay, and the reason for that is because if you intend to farm these bosses, and I've mentioned this in my previous video because it was an Uber Elder guide, you should be selling these Watcher's Eyes unidentified. So now what we're going to have to do is figure out how much is an unidentified Watcher's worth. So what we're going to do is we're going to head over to the website, typing Watcher's Eyes, and what's going to be important is that under item level, because this is Uber Elder, we are going to look at item level 86. By looking at item level 86, it's going to make sure that it's 3-stat Uber Elder Watchers, and therefore it's going to be good. And we're going to be look at identified, and we're going to look at no. Now we're going to get the value of an unidentified Watcher's Eyes, which seems to be going for about 7 exalts right now. Now, of course, these prices are going to be drastically different in a league start scenario, but just to use this value right now, 7 exalts, I don't even know what exalts are worth right now. Let's just say they're 100 chaos. So that would be 700 chaos. So we are going from 25.4 to 700. Now all of a sudden, Uber Elder with Gaze into the Abyss, instead of being a profit of like negative 115 chaos or whatever, it's actually 105 chaos profit every single time. Of course, this is an average, right? So the next thing we want to do, now that we figured out that actually farming Uber Elder with Gaze into the Abyss is profitable, decently profitable. I mean, you can probably farm one every about 5 minutes or so. So you can make quite a bit of profit if you're going to be like speed running these, if you have the fragments available. What we got to figure out is we need to remember this number of 105, and next we're going to go into invitations. Now, if we look at invitation, it's actually also very misleading, because if I look at the Feared, I'm going to see a profit of 301 chaos. I'd be like, wow, I want to farm the Feared right now. Like, this is great profit. The problem here is that this profit does not account for the price of any of the actual bosses that you need to kill before. All it counts is the price of the Feared encounter itself, 2 chaos. And then it looks at all of the different drops that you can get from the Feared, right? And then it's spitting out the number, which is the profit. But this doesn't count for the fact that you need to run, you know, Uber Elder, you need to run Chayula, you need to run Uber Zeri, you need to run all the other encounters, which maybe are actually all a net loss. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at full run invitations instead. And now we can look at the actual Feared, full run Uber Elder invitation Feared, or full run invitation Feared. Now, full run invitation means that you've done regular Elder, and then full run Uber Elder means you've done Uber Elder. But again, we need to fix the Watcher's Eyes prices, right? And we need to fix the Uber Elder Gaze into the Abyss. Because remember, right? Uber Elder Gaze into the Abyss is saying that it's a profit of negative 117 chaos, but we know that's not true. We just did the math on it, and it's actually a profit of 105 chaos. Now, we can basically pretty much just use this Cortex value and this Uber Zeri value. These are never really going to change because this is already accounting for everything, or at least it should be. And same thing for Chayula. These are all going to be net negatives pretty much. But the other thing that we need to look at is also the Watcher's Eyes from the actual encounter, right? The Feared encounter. There's a 24% chance, so it doesn't seem to be affected by Gaze into the Abyss, I guess, according to Grimrose math, which is, I would probably 100% trust into that. So again, it says that it's worth 25.4C, but that's also wrong, right? Because we need to sell them unidentified. So what we have to do is look at the price of unidentified, but of course, this is not going to be item level 86. It's going to be item level 85 maximum. 86 minimum, 85 maximum. And this is going to be looking for 2-stat Watcher's Eyes, which is what's actually going to be dropping from the Feared, because the Feared is not going to ever drop 3-stat Watcher's Eyes. It's only ever 2 stats. Identified, no, and then we look at the value of those. So it seems that for unidentified item level 85 and below, is about 150 chaos, let's say. So again, we're going from 25 to 150. That's a pretty massive difference, right? That's a pretty massive difference. So now we could pretty much, I would say, trust the rest of the stuff. What you could also do, however, is to look at anything that is worth below 10 chaos and just remove it, because maybe it's going to basically skew your results a little bit, right? Because some of this stuff might just not sell. So for example, the Vertex, maybe we just say, that's not gonna sell. Offering a Serpent, that's not gonna sell. Severed in Sleep won't sell. Green Dream won't sell, right? If we remove all this stuff, then it's going to just remove it from the actual calculation, which may give us, you know, even more of an accurate calculation of what we're going to be getting. Of course, Orb of Unmaking, you want to keep it because on average it's quite a bit. Now if we look at it, oh, I guess we can't do that. You can't do that. You'd have to put 0. My bad. If you delete it, it's just going to cause an error. So let's go ahead and put that at 0 instead, and then we're going to get a pretty accurate estimation of our profit potential here. So if we remove all the really cheap stuff and we fix the price of the Watcher's Eyes, which are going to be a very important part of this whole thing, we can see that on average now we are getting a profit margin of roughly 80 for chaos, and this is actually an accurate number. So let's just say that you can farm 3 of these in an hour. That means you're making about 2.4x, and of course this doesn't count all the profit you're going to be making from all the bosses prior to the feared, right? Because they are accounted for 100% loss, right? So this is also not 100% accurate, and the reason for that is because it's counting Uber Ziri at 100% loss, it's counting Cortex at 100% loss, it's counting Uber Elder. Well, now we fixed that, but it was counting at 100% loss. It's even counting Chiula Breachstone at 100% loss. It's not necessarily going to be 100% loss, right? You are going to be making profit from some of these different encounters. Of course, you can look at whether you're going to make profit or not under the bosses page, but this is still an accurate number of how much profit you're going to be making from the feared itself, regardless of all the other bosses and all the other encounters that you need to do in order to even access the feared. In terms of the feared itself, your actual true profit is going to be somewhere around 85 chaos. And of course, this doesn't count for anything else, any of the other bosses. So even at this point in the league, right, with the league being completely dead, literally just a couple days before the league even ends, there is profit to be made farming the feared. And of course, this number would be significantly higher in a league start scenario when some of these items and some of these bosses are dropping things that are worth so much more than what we have accounted for here. And a lot of these things that I put at 0 value, right, a lot of these in the league start scenario are actually still also pretty expensive, or at least a lot more expensive than nothing. Because there's demand for them, like Cyclopean Coil, for example, right? It's actually a pretty good build, especially if you get a good roll. That's another thing to note for, is that a lot of these items you'll want to actually look at the rolls on them because that can dictate whether they're worth absolutely nothing or whether they have some pretty decent value. Okay, so that's pretty much it. I think that's all I have to say in regards to the fear. Now, we didn't actually do a proper, showcase, but again, I probably would have just, it would have been a coin flip of whether I'm even able to do it or not. It would have been similar to the hidden invitation from the Breach Lords, where I just kind of walked in there and died, like died 6 times. I was like, okay, well, hopefully you guys enjoyed watching me die 6 times. But I think that a lot of the information was a lot more useful than an actual showcase. Now, in terms of how I go about running these invitations, same thing. Run around in a circle. Use your dashes only whenever there's a mechanic that's going to be hitting you. Try to keep as many charges as possible and just walk around in a circle. Let your totems do their job. That's really all there is to it. Anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Before I go, as always, I want to say massive thank you to my supporters: Jordan, Fruitfly, Thomas, Neroth, Master Tim, Nick, Jacob, Flame Scorpion, Reese, Emil, Road to Millions, Alex, Brandon, Don, Joseph, welcome back, Panda, Atticus, Scott, Bard, Grimoire, Johnny, Ronald, Kevin, Mercury, and Bitizen, as well as, of course, anybody else who supported me in the past, anybody else who wishes to remain anonymous. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. I'll catch you guys in the next guide. Peace.